Hey everyone, it's Chris. Today I'm going to be showing you Unfold3d, which I think is a great software for both unfolding and packing UVs, especially UVs that require specific layout or specific straighten on certain edges. With that said, let's get into the tutorial. So basically this is the model that I made a little while ago. I broke it down into just smaller parts in order to really demonstrate this tutorial. So for part one, I'm just going to show you getting your model into the program and setting it up and starting with a grid base. So let's do these three parts. What you want to do is every part that you're going to want to isolate by itself, you're going to want to toss into its own group. So in this case we have silencer, we have front sight, and we have rail. Next, what you're going to want to do is you're going to go to UV and automatic map it. I did try planar map and that was working, although I was running into a really odd crash with it, so I had to switch to automatic. Any type of just basic unwrap should work, or you might not even need to unwrap at all. So with that said, let's select this. Let's export it as an OBJ. You want to do OBJ with groups, or you can do FBX as well. Let's open the software. Now let's load the UV. Top left, File, Load UV. The one with the groups. So this is the same model we were just looking at. As you can see, it has the seam set up from the automatic unwrap in Maya. To start, let's cover the 3D layout. On the top left here, you can either do full screen or you can do half and half. Same thing with the UVs, full screen, half and half. You have multiple options to shade your model. You can either just do flat shaded like this, wireframe, or both. You will probably end up working with this mode the most. For textures, you can put a checker box on. You can put a texture grid on. Unfortunately, this is really small. So instead what I did is I went to texture custom down here. If you hover over it, it says you can load user texture, file, load user texture. I did a UV texture smart right here, or small, and that's a 256 by 256. What I'm going to do, actually before I do that, you can enable or disable lighting. You can see through your selection. So you can see back there. Right now I'm going to toggle it back to no texture. To tumble around your model, Alt and left mouse button. To zoom, Alt and right mouse button. To pan, Alt and middle mouse button. Now for selections, these are going to primarily be your F1 through F4 key, and you can find these over here. So F1 is points, F2 is edges, F3 is polygons, and F4 is islands. So as you can see, F4 island, F3 face, F2 edge, and F1 point. Now with that said, let's get to unwrapping. So what we're going to want to do first is isolate this, because we have a lot of UVs here and we're primarily concerned with the suppressor area right now. So those groups we set up earlier, if we come up here, show file data selection dialog, you have your OBJ groups that you set up earlier. Unfortunately, this has every mesh, but you should be able to just find your groups, and what you could do is you could put grp underscore, and then that would be an easy way to find the groups that you set up. So now that this is all selected, and take note that you need to be in islands mode if you're in edges mode, and it has a little warning up here, but you select, and it's not actually selecting the island. So you're going to go to Islands, Silencer, Select, and then down here we have Island Visibility. We can click Isolate. This may be hidden for you. In fact, a lot of these will be hidden. So we're going to go to Island Visibility, press the plus button, and then I just pressed Isolate. If you're wondering what more of these do, and in fact for every panel, there's a little question mark here. It gives you more info about everything, and this can be a great way to dive into some features that don't seem that aren't as straightforward. You also have some mouse interaction here, some extra hotkeys. So now to start unwrapping this, these seams that the automatic mapping setup aren't ideal. So what we're going to do in here, and by the way, the controls for this, Alt and middle mouse button to pan, Alt right mouse button to zoom, and Alt left does not do anything. When you click on an island, spacebar middle mouse pans it around, spacebar right click rotates, spacebar left click zooms, and Control Z undoes, and Control Shift Z is a redo. So what we're going to do first is eliminate all these seams. We're going to hit F2 for edge selection. We're going to select all of these. We're going to go up here to the seams. We're going to go weld. These are all welded together. And this looks terrible, but we'll work from here. So F2, we're in edge selection, and as you can see, this menu changes as you go through the modes. So in here we have this thing called auto seams. Let's expand it out. You have multiple automatic auto seams, so you have a pelt tool. And this is going to select this, which isn't really what we want for hard surface. Maybe characters. We have a mosaic tool. Again, this selection looks alright, not really what we're looking for though. Sharpest angle tool will select based on normal angle. So we're going to bump this down to 80. We're going to click on it. This is actually looking pretty nice. Although I'm actually going to close this. Although we're having these edges run across the model, and I'm actually going to toggle see-through selection off. So in order to get rid of these edges, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the select hole links. We're going to run this again, and now you can see it's just selecting those sharp edges. We're going to go up here to cut. Now all these edges are cut. We're going to go F4. We're going to select all of these, drag select, press U or go down here for unfold. Now these are all unfolded, and we can get to work. So now we're going to want to go to F2. Obviously we want to put a seam down here to ensure this actually unfolds. C for cut, F4 to select the island, U for unfold again. This is giving us a pretty nice base to start with. Spacebar right click to rotate it, spacebar left click to zoom. Mouse wheel to zoom in as well. We're going to place this here. I actually like the scale of this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to layout. I'm going to go to textile density. I'm going to pick this textile density. I'm going to drag select here, and I'm going to set it for all of this. And one thing that I forgot to do is with all these things being at weird angles, you can see if the software can straighten them by selecting everything. We're going to go to pack. And as you can see, it definitely straightened these out, so we don't have to do that manually. I'm going to drag select again. Spacebar left mouse button to shrink it down a little bit. Drag it to the top left. So it did a really nice job straightening this all out. Let's start with this larger piece, because I think it'll have a lot of neat problems to solve. So what we're going to do is F2, select this edge, and you can see there's a bit of bending right here. And for baking normal maps or texturing or packing, having these types of bends is not good, and will lead to less clean bakes. You'll have all the pixels kind of going up, stepping up and down, and it's just better to have a flat edge there. So we're going to use the constrain tools. So by double clicking this, we select the edge loop. We're going to constrain it horizontally. We're going to do the bottom one a slightly different way. We're going to drag select over here. You can see that we have all these selected, so now let's try getting rid of these. Up, we clicked and everything went away. Let's drag select again. By using Control and Shift, you can remove selections from the overall selection. If you need to add to it again, you can hold Control and left click and it will add one. Control Shift, it will remove. So now that that's selected, let's do horizontal. Let's go back to F2. Let's do vertical for these. And if you want to remove the constraints, you can use this unconstrained edges. Now that this is done, let's go to island. Let's press optimize right here, or the hotkey for that is O. And these edges are looking really nice. Unfortunately, these edges right here are more or less touching, and this is going to lead to some issues with the bake. In order to solve that, we're going to want to move this point over to the right and this point over to the left and pin everything and let it solve for that. So in order to do that, we're going to want to go to F1 and then spacebar middle mouse will move it over. And you can see I moved to the right, but I might have moved it up and down a little bit, and this might be undesirable if you really just did want to move it directly to the right in order to keep those edges perfectly flat. So what we're going to do is undo that with Control Z. We're going to hit Tab, which gives us this transform gizmo. If you are doing a lot of movements, you can go to the top right here, and under transform you can hit show tool, and now regardless of your selection it will show up. I find that it gets a little distracting, so I tend to just use Tab. So let's move these all into place. Looks good. What we're going to want to do is if we hit F4 and optimize again, with O, it's going to bring these back out, so we need to pin these. So we're going to hit F1, drag select using control. Let's constrain these. Let's F1, F1 tab, move this over to the left. Let's roughly line it up. Let's pin all those. Pin all those, and ideally I would have flattened this out, but for time's sake I'm not going to flatten every edge. So again, moving these all, select, pin. Now we go back to F4, and one thing you want to do is just make sure to save often, so I'm going to do that right now. Now I'm going to optimize this, and you can see these, with the calculation that it's doing, it's starting to pull these outer edges inward and create some warping with these straight edges that we have in the model. And that's going to lead to some slight texture distortion. So instead of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to F1 and select the border of this island. And now I'm going to pin this. I'm going to go back to F4, press O for optimize. And you can see we haven't distorted the UVs too much, but we have some nice bends here, so this should bake much nicer now. This piece is finished. This piece looks great. From the pack that we did, it rotated it nicely. These both look great. This looks great. There's a few little guys here that we need to straighten out. And you can do this to multiple islands at once if you drag select and press O, and if you want to keep optimizing, just hold O and it'll repeat the command. If you go here and press F, it'll focus on it. For this ring, we want to put a cut there so it can unwrap properly, so we're going to select back here in the 3D view. We're going to press C to put a cut. Click this again, press U for unfold. This is unfolded. We can just straighten this out real quick. F4, hold O to optimize. That looks great. The suppressor is looking really nice now with this unfold, and it was nice and quick. Some other quick options, by the way. Let's say you want to straighten out a UV. You can either move it, or you can use this align, straighten, flip. You have a lot of options here. So let's say these two edges you want to be parallel. Now they're parallel. Let's say you just want this one to be straight again. Horizontal. Obviously I'm going to undo that. I actually don't find myself using these much. Also for character artists, something that may be useful is these modify brushes. So you have a brush right here. and you can drag around. You also have a spread. This is going to spread these apart from each other. You can change the brush radius, how much pressure to apply, what kind of profile, whether or not you want the pins to be enabled, and then we also have pinch. And then again, you have an unfold brush or an optimize brush. So let's say you're unfolding a hand, and there's like a really tricky area, but everything else is looking great. You can just use the optimize brush and paint on that one area, and it will only optimize the based on these brush settings. So I believe I've covered most of the features. There's a few more in here. Again, if you're interested in learning about the rest of these, you can always just go to each menu and press the question mark, and that will give you more info. But for a starting video, that is the basic unfolding options in Unfold3d.